Silent Clubstep is probably the most recognizable impossible level in the game. It is a level created in 1.8 but published in 1.9 by a creator named Silent. Most of its original exposure came from the legendary player Summerize at the time by showcasing a video of the level in practice mode. Summerize was deemed as one of the best players in the game at the time and was pretty well known for his demeaning difficulty rankings. Having a player like that say that a level is impossible carried a whole lot more weight than it normally would. Even if there were older impossible levels made previously, Silent Clubstep is the level that managed to garner the most attention in the grander scheme of the community, caused by Summerize's massive popularity in the community at the time. In the 1.9 era of the community, the thought of hack-uploaded levels existing was unheard of, which made the verification of this level a mystery. There were two main cheating methods that were known to the community at the time, which was either speed hacking or the blue orb method, as shown on the screen here. Over the years, it has managed to gather popularity through the ongoing question: is it possible to beat Silent Clubstep? When looking into the level itself, the most infamous section is the first ship part. The first cube section was brutal when released, but with the skill of players today, it is manageable for many. But the ship part is one of the most brutal ship parts that have ever been made. Ever since the level's original release, the unnerved version of the ship has been debated for years whether it is possible to beat or not. The ship has today been beaten by a number of players such as Icedcave and Septagon. However, it has not happened from 0% in current time, as the world record in this version sits at 9%. While all the other parts surrounding the ship have been beaten in succession, the pre-drop is what mainly stops any player from making successful runs from the beginning. As for the drop, the level appears more possible on the surface, but there are a number of issues in getting runs. There are some infamous sections across the rest of the level, such parts being the infamous diagonal mini-ship straight fly, the duel section, the nicknamed 8 jumps of hell, and the impossible maze. The diagonal mini-ship straight fly is one of the toughest sections in the level, due to how precisely you need to control the ship's high vertical speed. On top of that, there are orbs and gravity portals inside the sections, and in this version of the level, every spike and structure are invisible for half of it. It is a very dumb section, and beating this ship consistently is almost a pipe dream. The duel section of this level involves an asymmetric duel using the game modes cube and ball. While the two game modes together are consistent, most if not all jumps in this duel are brutal. There are some near frame perfect ball jumps as well as massive 5 spike jumps with a cube, where after each cube jump the ball has to do its near frame perfect jumps before the cube lands back down again. It is very simple in theory and thankfully can be made consistent through practice. The 8 jumps of hell have been named that way because of how each jump is a frame perfect jump even on higher FPS. Today there's a challenge named 8 jumps of hell with an exact replica of the section from Silent Clubstep, which has been further extended by another challenge named Final Destination, which is beating the same cube section twice. The so-called impossible maze, while not actually impossible, has been named that way due to how at the end of the maze there's a massive wall with only one way to get through. Because of how well hidden the main path you're supposed to take is, it seemed like the ending was literally impossible to beat. In Summerize's video, he ends up jumping over the wall, which is a bit of a mystery in how he did that, as the original version of the level today has a bus out there. You have to take the main path, which once memorized is one of the easiest parts of the level, ironic given the name of the section. The pattern of jumps in the maze looks like this. On top of the fact that all these parts exist, there are even more problems. In the 1.9 version of this game, this level was theoretically possible, and easier even, but in the 2.1 version it is now both harder and physically impossible. There are two main features that changed with the game that made attempting this level a whole lot more unreasonable. Alongside that, there's an overall problem with the game that makes it even more unbearable. The biggest problem is how ship physics were changed in the 2.0 update, and there are differences throughout compared to the 1.9 version. In the 1.9 version of the game, the ability to control the vertical movement for the ship was a bit more controllable. It was more responsive to where you wanted the ship to go, which made it more difficult to strafe fly. An interesting example of this being the case is that the verifier for Bloodbath, Riot, was the only player to beat Bloodbath in the 1.9 version of the game. With the ship physics updated in 2.0, it was easier to strafe fly, and with more players discovering higher hertz, players began beating it, which was easier in the current update. While in the 1.9 version it is harder to fly straight, Overall, every ship section is easier with 1.9 ship physics apart from specific straight flight cases. In Silent Clubstep's case, with the vertical movement of the ship being limited, it makes certain ship setups near impossible. Such examples of parts affected by this is two of the most infamous ones: the diagonal mini-ship strafefly and the brutal first ship strafefly. Another change that made Silent Clubstep impossible is the way orbs function in the 2.1 update. The ball section of 32 and the cube orb section before the duel broke in the 2.1 update as the old school gameplay technique broke in those sections. The two sections uses something called a layered orb. A 2.1 layered orb in short is two or more orbs stacked on top of each other that work differently depending on how the orbs clicked. An example will be if you place a yellow orb on top of a blue orb. Depending on the priority of each orb, will use that orb first over any other. In the 1.9 version, there were genuine timings involved with these. In the layered orbs in Silent Clubstep, they have three different orbs, which in this case are blue, yellow and purple. But unfortunately, a layered orb with three or more orbs became impossible with the new 2.1 update. With new click tech, a layered orb with two orbs can be bypassed assuming the priority is correct for the level situation. With Silent Clubstep, the ball part was possible to circumvent with a double click tech and the other layered orbs were easy to deal with. As with the cube section however, the way the game gives priority to the blue orb turns the section officially impossible. On top of other inconsistency issues such as frame alignment, with all parts summarized it really was impossible to beat the original unnerved version of Silent Clubstep, and at first, it would seem to stay that way. But in case there are those players that still believe that someone with enough time would somehow be able to beat the unnerved version of this level, here is something that will convince you otherwise. In the unnerved version, the 8 jumps of hell are impossible on 60 Hz unless you align them with a specific frame, which is what I did when I got the record of 69 to 100 back in the day. For 144 Hz users, there's one frame for each jump where you can just about make it over, which makes it theoretically possible to beat the level. But the main issue with this is that Geometry Dash is desperately trying to keep a consistent frame rate, especially on higher refresh rate. If you want proof of this being the case, take the example of Kremal's level high. This level is impossible in 240 Hz due to a specific gap, but if you place a checkpoint next to it, with enough luck the game will skip the frame where you can collide with a spike and you will get through. This can be done in repeated session. With that in mind, pretend that we have an incredible run where a player has fluked every section and reached the 8 jumps of hell from 0. If the game at any point has skipped a frame during that run, which is very likely, if those frames are off, you're not making it across those jumps based on random chance. A luck element in an already impossible level. What I'm saying may not actually be entirely true, I could be bullshitting for all I know, but theoretically it does make sense that this would be a problem. So even if you were to miraculously beat the infamous first ship, fluke the entire rest of the level as soon as a player made it to the drop, the 8 jumps of hell is specifically what will stop you. With all this said and how unreasonable it is to even try beating the unnerved version of this level, probably one lingering question for many of you is how was this level uploaded? It was established that the blue orb trick was not used and the level was physically impossible for almost all players' refresh rate at the time, suggesting that using speed hack or a practice mode buy didn't work either. So how could Silent have possibly uploaded the level? Well, in a conversation involving Silent and Icedcave, Silent explained that Silent Clubstep, along with his other impossible levels, jailbreaked his phone in order to gain access to tools such as Game Guardian. Game Guardian is a hack or alteration tool that can be used to configure variables in a mobile game, which depending on the game can be pretty much anything. This tool allowed Silent to manually edit code to verify his levels similar to the cheat engine exploit that was discovered in 1.9, allowing for levels like Silent Circles, Slaughterhouse, Death Corridor, and other impossible levels to be verified. To explain this in a simple manner, the tool allowed access to setting the variable for verified from 0 to 1. With this knowledge, it does make the mystery of this level a lot weaker, doesn't it? The exploit since then has been patched out, and the final level verified using this exploit by Silent was Silent Poltergeist, verified with the cheat engine version of the exploit by Icedcave. It is unknown how the original method on mobile truly worked, but the way it worked in the cheat engine version involved a very stupid and long process. First, the level was verified with a secret way, then using cheat engine to input the 1 value for verified. After this, multiple scans are made for variables that are configurable over and over until you find the variable for verified. If the user did not have any programming experience prior to this was simply trial and error until the correct variable showed up. Every time the variable was changed and it was not the correct variable, the level needed to be unverified, reset the change variable to default value, and repeat the scan. Eventually, it would be possible to trick the game into thinking the level was verified, hence the exploit was successful. With most necessary details mentioned and hopefully most speculations covered, it is probably pretty clear to most of you that the original unnerfed version of Silent Clubstep was never going to be beaten. The main difficulty of the level lies at the first 20%, and no player has ever beaten the whole unnerfed section, and it will most likely stay that way. The level faded into obscurity and was left as a remembrance to a level that was a truly impossible level. There is now a rated remake by me named Silent Clubstep, released in May 2018, but it was left as a disappointment due to the heavy nerfing that took place. While there would be new rising players trying to do new runs in the level, such as Septagon, making runs such as 24 to 63, 48 to 98, and 62 to 100, the level was never going to be beaten. That was until in June 2020, where Silent would return to the game, doing something about it. On 8th of June 2020, a video was released on Icecave's channel, showcasing the original upload of Silent Clubstep has been updated to make it more possible. Many minor nerfs and fixes were added and were carefully playtested on 240Hz. A backstory behind the update discussed that Silent himself commented on one of Icecave's videos. With Icedcave and Silent having been friends in the 1.9 to 2.0 update prior to this encounter, shortly after he got in contact with him through Discord and spoke about Silent Clubstep. Silent was interested in updating the level to fix the broken layered orbs in two parts. Icedcave decided to show Silent how the level had changed over the years and also bring light to some of the problems that have been caused by fixed changes. With this information, Silent decided to fix the level to work as intended on 1.9, as well as nerfing jumps, adding visibility, nerfing the dropship, 71 to 76, and more. With this update, the idea of beating Silent Clubstep suddenly didn't seem like a lost cause anymore, and players began trying to get runs again. In the updated version of Silent Clubstep, most of the level's recent achievements can be quickly summarized by the player Hyperbola. When this script is being written, the current world record sits at 14% by this player, as well as the 24 to 100 run. At this rate, it is only a matter of time before Hyperbola reaches the drop, which would be pretty revolutionary for this level. Other than potentially Septagon, there aren't many other players trying to get far on this level. While players at the time are not ready to beat Silent Clubstep yet, with how insane some players are out there with grinding levels like these, it probably is inevitable that someone will eventually beat this version of Silent Clubstep. Most of what I've mentioned so far is fairly well known to the community, as you can fairly easily find this information on your own by simply searching for the level name on sites like YouTube or ask some appropriate people. However, there are a number of things that are not known by anybody other than the creator himself. One of these facts puts Silent Clubstep into a pretty different perspective of what the level could have been. Silent told Icecave that apparently, Silent Clubstep was not supposed to be as hard as the final version we've come to know of today. As a matter of fact, Silent said that someone would have had the world record of 50% or higher by now if the original level was still intact. So, what is the cost of Silent buffing the first 20% of the level so carelessly and aggressively? Well, as many other creators and players in this game have had to deal with over the years, Silent lost his save data by screwing up the hack verification, and the original intended version of Silent Clubstep was lost. In a reckless and stressful rage, Silent rebuilt the entirety of Silent Clubstep, but with the first 20% being way harder than intended. Most of the frustration was put into the most infamous part of them all, the first ship part, which resulted in a level spawning this infamous reputation. The orb spam at 14% was not 2 blocks in size, but 3 blocks in size, much like how Silent Clubstep looks like right now except with cube. So basically, the only reason Silent Clubstep probably has not been beaten and was made into the impossible mess that has remained unbeaten over the years is because of this one misstep in trying to hack the level. With this discovery, an old version of Silent Clubstep was done to try and mimic what the first version of the level would have looked like. The decoration was said to be pretty much the same, but there are a number of differences throughout, making the level a whole lot easier. Allow me to demonstrate. With that said, this pretty much summarizes the story of Silent Clubstep as a level. It can be summarized as an impossible level that could have been something else if not for the recklessness when trying to hack verify the level. Despite that, it cannot be denied the impact that this level managed to achieve in the community. Only until recent times has the idea of being able to verify Silent Clubstep seemed possible, and the future will reveal what happens to it. As will the level Silent is working on as we speak. Something that will excite portions of the community quite tremendously. But that is a story for another time. Enjoy this honorable mention, showing a video by Zoros, who was the first to show a full normal mode completion of Silent Clubstep.